Hey guys, I wanted to give you an update on the presidential race in case it fell through the cracks for you. So we're talking about South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who just officially endorsed Donald Trump in his 2024 bid for president. This is very big news because it essentially locks down Trump's choice as Kristi Noem as vice president. I would say after this endorsement, Trump is 75% likely to choose Noem, the South Dakota governor, as vice president.
History cannot and it should not be rewritten. We must remember what has happened in the past, learn from it, and not allow those who abuse their power to ever perpetuate their harm again. It is my honor to present to you the man in the arena. He is a man of significance. He is the leader, the fighter that our country needs. He has my full and complete endorsement for President of the United States of America.
And in this video, we'll talk about still some of the other people that Trump might choose, some people that will certainly help him in his bid to defeat Joe Biden, and some that he still wants to choose that will certainly hurt him. And there's going to be a lot of comments, perhaps, I could already anticipate it, of people saying, well, who cares who the vice presidential nominee is? It's not worth, as John Nance Garner said, who was Franklin Roosevelt's vice president, it's not worth a warm bucket of spit. Or, that quote was actually censored, it's not worth a warm pile of shit. That's what John Nance Garner actually said. Well, things have changed since the 1940s, I can tell you that. And I could say it's essentially guaranteed that the reason Trump defeated Hillary Clinton was because he chose Mike Pence. And he was able to lock down all the evangelical voters who didn't like Trump's morals and didn't like Trump's character, but felt that Pence had such a consistent track record. Essentially, his claim to fame was being anti-abortion, was being pro-religious liberty, whether you support it or not support it. And so many people hesitant to vote for Trump, so many Republicans, they needed to retain that base. Instead of staying home because they just simply didn't like Trump, they decided to vote for the ticket because Pence was on it. And by that same argument, Hillary Clinton, the worst decision that she made in the 2016 campaign was not the debates, not the emails, not the deplorable stuff. It was choosing Tim Kaine as her vice president. That is what lost her the election. Remember, she won the popular vote, and the electoral vote was pretty close as well. Imagine if she chose somebody other than Tim Kaine. What was Tim Kaine famous for? Essentially being a mainstream establishment Democratic, unremarkable foot soldier. He was milquetoast, he was boring, he was vanilla, he seemed like a nice guy, unlike Hillary. Hillary wasn't likable, so he was kind of likable, but he had no charisma, no charm, no personality, no fire to his speeches, none of that. What if Clinton had chosen Cory Booker? Would Cory Booker lighten up Hillary's unrelatable, unlikable image? Gives a few speeches, draws out a few extra black voters. Maybe Clinton wins Michigan. Maybe she gets that narrow margin that she didn't get, that she lost by 10,000 in the state of Wisconsin. Maybe a few people wouldn't like Hillary Clinton, but they found Booker to be so likable that he would have created those switches in votes and would have won the election. Same argument would go for Sherrod Brown, the senator from Ohio. And the reason that Brown is unique, he wasn't terribly charismatic or anything, but he was known as being progressive on labor issues. He was known as being the union guy in the Senate, and therefore very pro-working class, and therefore has a lot more in common with Bernie Sanders as a senator than he had in common with Hillary Clinton as a senator. So I think a lot of those disaffected Bernie voters, just like the disaffected conservatives, Ted Cruz voters came to support Trump because Mike Pence is on the ticket, a lot of those disaffected Bernie voters would have enthusiastically gone, I think, for Hillary, or enough of them, because Sherrod Brown was on the ballot. So the vice presidential choice means everything. It means the election. It is the singularly most important occurrence in the election. I know that's a radical claim to make, but in today's day and age, when all of them are so close anyway, no candidate is ever going to get above 55% again. That didn't happen. The last time Obama did remarkably well, somewhat, against Mitt Romney, and Obama got, I believe, 53% of the vote. So it matters. It might not have mattered 50 years ago when Lyndon Johnson got 65% of the vote against Barry Goldwater. Who cares? But if it's anything's under 10 points, I'm sorry, the vice presidential choice is going to make a difference. So we'll start with Kristi Noem. And I'm not going to be crass here, but I'm just trying to understand Trump's mindset and describe it to you. He needs to choose a smoke show, or he wants to choose a smoke show as his vice presidential candidate. Now, I don't care how attractive, or I don't care about the looks personally of a vice presidential candidate, but I think if you're looking at Trump's mindset and his strategy, looks are everything. And there's a difference between attractive and then choosing a candidate who represents that kind of cartoon character attractiveness where that wolf is looking at a woman going by and he goes, awooga! Kristi Noem is the awooga candidate. Nikki Haley might be a choice. She is physically attractive, certainly, but doesn't have that same oomph as Kristi Noem. And I mentioned that little cartoon bit because Trump doesn't just want somebody attractive. He wants somebody, and this won't help him win or not, he wants somebody who is sexually attractive to him. I think that's crucially important, who is very sexually attractive, because I think Trump looks at sexual attractiveness as power in a woman. I would say women are the same as men and they present power in other ways. But I think if you're looking at Trump's mindset, to him, what power is sexiness in a woman. So Noem completely makes sense. Noem will actually help Trump win too. She's a very good communicator. And what's smart about Noem is her famous conservative credentials aren't the social stuff, although she's been conservative on that. We've noticed that when the GOP talks about banning abortion, or even talks about a lower wage, they don't get popular support. Abortion measures have been defeated in now at least 2 states, essentially defeated in 2 states, Kansas as well as Ohio, and 3 states as well as Michigan. But Noem staked her career on COVID-19, which could be interpreted as a bipartisan issue. Yes, the GOP has been known to be the ones who fought against the shutdowns and the lockdowns during COVID, but there's one popular Democrat that everybody seems to like named Jared Polis. Polis, in the state of Colorado, he is a gay governor who's the state of Colorado, so made some history in that regard. He was one of the slowest states to shut down Colorado in the midst of the COVID pandemic. He initiated a light shutdown that was comparable to GOP states like Arkansas, Alabama, etc., about a very similar time frame. But he did not shut it down like they did in Rhode Island or other other blue states. So he became known as the Libertarian Democrat, and nobody hates Polis. He's still mentioned as a future contender. If Biden wasn't running, a lot of people would support Polis. So Noem did the same thing. She, even more so DeSantis, never locked down her state and essentially kept it wide open the entire time. That's a good credential, and quite frankly, that's a good credential in a conservative primary and to rally the base, but also to get independents and some disaffected Democrats. There are a lot of Democrats who might be progressive on abortion, might be progressive on LGBT rights, might be progressive on healthcare, on increasing the wage, but they might find themselves to be liberal in the classic civil liberties way of thinking about it, and therefore are not supportive. We're not supportive of the COVID lockdowns, especially after there's all this research done, even after they locked down the parks and hiking trails and outdoor open spaces, that COVID really couldn't be spread outside. So Noem, if you want a conservative credential, the least divisive one would be to be against the lockdowns. Abortion, LGBT rights, even supporting or even being opposed to a higher minimum wage, those are not selling points in a general election. It's one of the reasons that the GOP had such a terrible midterm. But lockdowns, opposing the COVID lockdowns, and finding that there might be some conspiracy, make her an excellent, excellent general election candidate. So I think at this point, if covering from bronchitis still, I think at this point, if Trump chose no, for better or for worse, I'm not going to give my own opinion about it, he would win the general election. She'd be a very smart choice because she's very physically attractive. That means something. It means something for Trump, and it means something for voters, too. I mean, attractive candidates tend to do well. So I think Trump finds her sexy, finds that she has the best conservative credential in terms of lockdown, not necessarily famous for abortion stuff or anything like that. And I think there's probably a deal going on. Trump also wants to project the image that he's not going to hire somebody who is reflexively loyal, that he's not this cult figure. He's trying to run away from that image. And think about some of the statements that Trump has been making in this general election. Attacking DeSantis for cutting Social Security. Trump wants to say, oddly enough, even though his personality is the other side, Trump wants to say, hey, I'm the almost liberal candidate on preserving Social Security. Same thing with abortion. He's made public statements saying that people have gone too far, banning abortion in the most restrictive way possible, including Ron DeSantis in their states. Trump has spoken out against that. So Trump is trying to pivot to the middle because he knows he has this nomination locked up. He doesn't need to play to the base. DeSantis is trying to do that. DeSantis is trying to say he's the more conservative candidate. Well, guess what? The GOP primary electorate does not care, which is a shame if you're a Democrat, because Trump does not have to pretend to be more conservative and then flip-flop in the general election. He is already campaigning, even in the primary, as a moderate, which will only help him in a general election. And Noem, even though she's quite conservative, will not hurt him. I think there was a deal made, and Trump wants to prove that, listen, I'm not this cult figure. I won't only work with people who were reflexively supportive of me until the very beginning, because it took Noem some serious time to actually go and endorse Trump. But I'm sure there was a deal with Trump saying, will you endorse me? I'd love to choose you as my vice president. And Noem is that figure who was holding off, so the media was wondering, and she could be representative of kind of closing out this primary altogether, that she was one of the popular GOP figures, endorsed Trump, and maybe now that it's early autumn, Trump wanted to roll out this endorsement to project that even people who are on the fence are now supporting him. And I think there might have been an underhanded deal that Trump would give her the vice presidential nomination, which is smart for her, I think. So that's Noem, I think 75% chance. Who is the second candidate that Trump would choose? And this candidate would also be smart. So I'm saying second most likely, and also a candidate that would be helpful, and that would be Congressman Byron Donalds.
Do hear your support of the former president, and I am curious, I know this is a hypothetical, but let's say he tapped you to be vice president. Is that something you would be interested in?
Yeah. I mean, it's an option. The funny thing is, people give these political answers. Oh, well, I'm just working on behalf of my community. But come on, man. If you're asked to serve in that capacity, who says no?
Trump has to choose either a woman or a minority as his vice president. I think he knows that. He feels that. The GOP tries to pretend they're not about identity politics at all, but look at his inside decision-making, and it's all about identity politics. So there's some hypocrisy going on in that regard. But Byron Donalds, he's newly elected, so he's only served for about 2 years at this point. Just got reelected to his second term. So he's really fresh and is only a congressman. But he has such a deep relationship with Trump. And he immediately was able to help Trump shift the narrative, because when DeSantis is about to announce, Trump issued a slew of local Florida endorsements. The one that he didn't have to worry about, who helped corral the other Florida congresspeople, was Congressman Byron Donalds. They are close friends, and when Trump had to report for one of his indictments in Florida, it was Byron Donaldson by his side, and they even made a fun show out of it. They stopped at a fast food place where Byron brought his family, and Donald certainly has an adorable family. Donalds himself seems easygoing, charismatic, handsome. Again, looks matter, not just for women, but for men too in this race. And he's kind of a very buff, handsome, tall, authoritative figure. And again, I'm talking about looks, because boy, is that an important factor in Trump's decision-making process. So I think he sees Donalds as this kind of tough, big black dude. Which is a great image, and I think he sees Donalds as projecting authoritative strength. So remember, it's all about being authoritative. With women, Trump feels like that authority is shown by being sexy. With men, it's all looks. That authority is shown by being broad, tall, and muscle-bound. So there's a very common theme, and Byron has been angling to be Donald Trump's running mate at least for 4 years. He denied the election. He said it was a farce. Noem, which is interesting, has said the election was problematic, and there are many states that that results might have changed after some investigation, but she didn't officially say the election was stolen. Although she didn't also officially say that Biden won the election. She kept trying to avoid the question. Donalds has just said it's stolen, end of story. So Trump might like that. Donalds was more loyal on that specific issue than Noem was. Of course, if Trump is trying to prove that he's not a cult figure and that he'll choose somebody who didn't agree with him 100% of the time, then Noem flip-flopping or trying to have her cake and eat it too about the election would be a good choice. But Trump really does value loyalty above all else. So second most likely in my mind to be chosen, who would also help Trump win the general election, because I think Donalds is very charismatic. He has a beautiful family, and he's just a slick, polished, but likable politician at the same time. And I think Donalds, with his personality, would get a lot of the black vote. And people might say, who cares about the black vote? Not enough are going to come to the GOP to win a state. Well, Romney got 2% of the black vote. Donald Trump, I think, got 10% of the black vote. What if Byron Donalds, grants him an additional 6%? 6% might make the difference in states with a decent black population like Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. Remember, when you're only talking about 3% on the line, these little things, and yes, the black vote, even though 80% is guaranteed to vote for the Democrats, that doesn't matter. If Trump gets an additional 6% of the black vote, then he wins those 2 states or those 3 states that he'll need to win. So again, this is why the vice presidential choice makes all the difference in the world. Number 3 that Trump would most likely choose is Tim Scott. You can tell he has a very good friendship with Tim Scott. Tim Scott does not represent, unlike Byron Donalds, black masculine authority. Tim Scott is black, obviously, and so that would still get a lot of that vote. Tim Scott comes off as very likable, very careful, probably too careful. He's known to be quite conservative, especially on abortion, which he's flip-flopped, but he's been more conservative on abortion than Haley, who said she would deny a national abortion ban, period, making her one of the more liberal candidates on that issue. Tim Scott has not. So, kind of like Mike Pence, Scott will bolster the evangelical conservative credentials of Donald Trump. And Tim Scott's an odd cat. He has apparently, in multiple interviews, Scott has said he is a virgin. That's how committed to the Bible that he is. Again, Pence won a lot of those conservative states, or states that have a conservative base, but that could have gone either way. I could think Pennsylvania has a fair amount of evangelicals. He won that base because of conservatism, and Tim Scott has founded his career based on being a religious conservative. Again, not waiting for sex until marriage, and there's some rumors that Tim Scott is gay. Probably Lindsey Graham is more likely if you're going to look at South Carolina politicians. But there are rumors that Tim Scott is gay. Not that I care, but some voters might. But aside from that, the fact that he's waiting to have sex until marriage means that he is a Bible thumper in his blood and in his veins. So it might get a lot of those hesitant people in Pennsylvania, in Georgia. Talk about a big evangelical base that Donald Trump will win because he lost Georgia last time. A black evangelical man, a black church-going man, that's going to win Donald Trump the state of Georgia, period. More so than even it would have allowed Pence, because there's a strong black religious community, I think, that the Democrats are ignoring, that are slowly shifting and gravitating towards the GOP because of their social views on abortion and other issues that people who are Christian-leaning and far-right-leaning would more effectively relate to. And that's a big segment of the black community. People think that most of the black community is reflexively liberal. Not true at all. Many in the proportionally more black people go to church than white people. So there's a lot of ground to pick from there. So Tim Scott, likable guy. Tim Scott also moderates Trump's image. Trump is the bombastic kind of asshole. Tim Scott is a likable, super nice guy that when he talks, you just want to smile. And the reason Trump might choose Scott is because he was very effusive in his praise when he complimented Tim Scott on his speech and said it was much better than Ron DeSantis's. So he has an admiration for Scott. And then the guys are friends. And then Scott, the one thing that Scott has against him is he hasn't committed to the stolen election thing. He said he felt like the election was real. But if Trump doesn't want to appear as a cult leader, having someone who actually accepts that Joe Biden won the election would actually be a very wise choice. So I would say 75% Noem, 5% Donalds, 5% Tim Scott. We're at 85%. Another one, Nikki Haley, 5% Nikki Haley. She would be in my opinion, she would be the best choice. Now, is she awooga attractive? No, but she is palpably, likably attractive, which I think is better. I think especially with men, some candidates who are so smolderingly attractive come off as unrelatable, and people might be jealous. Like, I find Newsom creepy because he's Gavin Newsom, the governor of California on the Democratic side. He's so creepy because he's so handsome. It makes you jealous, or it makes you think like he had too easy of a life. So same thing with women. Versus Haley is attractive, but not cartoonishly attractive, which would be smart. And she also just kicked ass in the debate. You know, I could see her mopping the floor with Kamala Harris. And in a way, she can be more aggressive against Harris than other candidates could be, simply because she's a woman. And what Haley was really smart in doing in the debate, in her exchange with Vivek Ramaswamy, was playing against type.
Off of it, but you've been pushing this lie. You've been pushing this lie all week, Nikki.
You want to go and defund Israel? You want to
okay, let me address that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now. This is the false lies of a professional politician. There you have it.
Your watch,
so the reality
make America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that you are.
She comes off as this very careful, overcalculated, genial person. So the moment she had that personal exchange, almost insulting Vivek, she seemed kind of cool. Because out of character, people think, oh, wow, if she's on the attack, it must be a valid attack, because she's so demure and so careful, she would never go on the attack. Now imagine she saves that all in her arsenal against Kamala Harris when the debate actually happens. People see her on the campaign trail. She seems nice. She seems reserved. She seems, unlike Trump, conciliatory and palpable and somewhat sane. And then she directs her fire in the most useful way possible against Harris. And it wins Trump the election. So let's talk about the two people that Trump will lose with, that he's still very, very much considering. Again, the awooga attractiveness, sexiness is part of it, which is why Trump probably has a 5% chance of choosing Karie Lake. Karie Lake is a bona fide loser. In a state where she was expected to win, she had lost to the really unremarkable Katie Hobbs. Katie Hobbs in Arizona for Arizona governor was the Secretary of State, and she refused to debate Lake. And I thought that was so irresponsible and reckless. She also refused to debate her primary opponent, who was this very eloquent mayor of Nogales, Arizona. She refused to debate both of them and essentially operated this Joe Biden basement-like campaign. It's kind of disgusting. I hate when candidates choose not to debate. But Lake came off as so crazy, but she didn't need to. She just needed to let Lake hang herself. It was that easy. Trump might choose her because she complimented Trump's BDE, or big dick energy. So she made kind of an overtly sexual comment about Trump. She started, this is when DeSantis had more of a chance, this was at CPAC, she started with complimenting Ron DeSantis's BDE, but essentially saying that he got that from Donald Trump. So again, I think Trump in his mind wants to have this sexual chemistry. I mean, he probably wants to bang him, but he at least wants to have this sexual chemistry or rapport with somebody. And Karie Lake has made an overtly sexual comment. And I think Trump, as a red-blooded man, thinking with a part other than his head, Karie Lake would be that number one person because she's shown that sexual energy back. So, I mean, let's just put it out there. Trump might want to sleep with his running mate. I don't think Noem would allow that to happen. I think Lake would.
I'll tell you what he's got. I don't know if you heard of this, but he's got BDE. Anybody know what that means? Ask your kids about it later. I call it Big DeSantis energy. He's got the same kind of BDE that President Trump has. And frankly, he has the same kind of BDE that we want all of our elected leaders to have.
So Donald Trump might be thinking about that, as childish and as frat boyish as that might be. And it seems kind of embarrassing to talk about attractiveness and sleeping with and sexual energy and stuff like that. But I guarantee you this is what Trump is thinking about in his psychology in his head. So this is why I bring it all up. And finally, this is a person who is kind of in direct battle with Karie Lake, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, the really wackadoodle congresswoman, who is famous for the Jewish space lasers quote, which is certainly a fun one, and a myriad of other horrific things. Not that sexually attractive, but I don't think Trump would find her very sexually attractive. But he is considering both Lake and Greene because internal reports say he keeps checking up with their teams. So Lake and Greene are in this competition. Karie Lake even called Marjorie Taylor Greene a grifter. So now they're directly insulting each other. Of course, both Lake and Marjorie Taylor Greene would just cement the attitude from other voters that, the GOP people are just a bunch of psychotics. Lake and Greene, in addition to many of their outlandish statements, immediately said that the election was stolen. Of course, Karie Lake, being a sore loser, said that her election in Arizona was stolen as well. That's not the way to win independent voters. That's not the way to win moderate country club Republican reporters of some wealth. That's not the way to win some Democrats who might be disaffected by Biden's efforts on COVID and all the lockdowns. They're going to look at these two people and think, well, Trump is insane and his running mate is even more insane, if that's possible, than Trump, so why would I vote for him? Versus Noem, Noem seems level-headed and smart and is a good communicator. So it'll be interesting to see what finally happens, but I am betting my money 75% chance on Noem. Trump will want to choose Lake or Greene, but his advisors won't let him, and I think he has enough sense to listen to advisors just on this one issue. So that's what to look out for at this moment. And future videos, just want to give you a heads up. Going to New Hampshire to actually cover the primary, I have an interesting detour before New Hampshire, which will be East Palestine, Ohio. Of course, that's where the toxic train chemical spill occurred. And I had the privilege of going down there for Valuetainment, which is the YouTube site I used to work for, and made a lot of good friends and was really blown away by getting the true story. I even did a stunt where I drank the water and got sick. I have chronic bronchitis now, so might got permanently sick from that. But really made a lot of good friends. And the sad thing about journalism today, especially mainstream media, is you look at a story for 4 days or a week and then you forget about it. Well, I want to come back and follow up. What is East Palestine 7-8 months later? Particularly, there's an election happening, which the media has not talked about. A mayoral election for mayor of East Palestine. The incumbent Trent Conaway is going to do his best to run again, despite a lot of consternation that people have over him. He does have a challenger. The challenger is being backed by the biggest organizing group around the train spill that picked up the government slack in the city. So that's going to be a really fun on-the-ground scene. Then we'll go up to New Hampshire. And then in the summer, we'll do a Mexican election. One more little sit-down video that you'll have is the major parties in Mexico have both chosen their candidate for president. And if you'll continue watching me, there's going to be a lot of news about the election in Canada, which should be 2025, maybe earlier, and the election in Mexico. Because I think as Americans, we tend to be ignorant about what's happening directly north of us and directly south of us. We tend to live in our own little world. I mean, how many of you watching could even, this is okay, I'm not saying anybody's ignorant for this, but how many of you watching could even name the president of Mexico or know who Aaron O'Toole is, who ran against Trudeau in the last, I think, very few people. And then to me, that's kind of sad, because to understand America, you have to deeply understand Canada and Mexico. And I only say this, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I've been to just for vacation, 48 states in the U.S., but also 6 provinces in Canada and 27 states in Mexico. So I always have a deep love of the country north and south, the countries north and south to me. So we'll do a little rundown on that, and I'll be in Mexico probably over the summer for the election there. But that's a little rundown. Finally, one last rundown. There's some comments saying I was still wrong about Danny Masterson. No, I was not. Aaron Smith-Levin, if you look at his video, says 15% of the sentence of his sentence could be knocked off, allowing him to be eligible for parole early. Now, I might have been a little reckless in my language when I said he could get out after 25 years. It might not be likely he'll get out after 25 years. But even Aaron Smith-Levin said there's going to be a 15% reduction, and therefore he'd be eligible for parole 15% before his sentence, which would be after 25 years. So I'm not incorrect about that. Now, is it likely he'll get parole? Probably not. But you know the money that his family has, and you know the connections that his family has. If you could hire an ace attorney to sway the parole board and write a good letter and get the recommendations that you need, with money, he could vary. So I said he had a 75% chance of being out. I'm still going to stick to that because I think he has very good lawyers, and I think he has a 75% chance of being out after 25 years. That's just my opinion. There's no right or wrong answer to this. So the commenters, not that I mind, I'm just having fun with you guys, but the commenters are saying I'm completely wrong. There's no right or wrong. He is eligible for parole. Sorry, after 25 years because of the age 60. Now, is he likely? That's a completely different argument that is entirely based on opinion and people just talking out of their butts, including myself. So that's subjective. But I didn't get that wrong because he is eligible for parole after 25 years. And I think with his legal team, he could probably get out after 25 years. A lot of people say you can't get out after the first parole, but in 30 years after the second, entirely possible. So I usually apologize for my mess ups. I'm going to stand by that one. But you know what we have coming next. And yeah, thank you for watching this little analysis. And thank you all for helping get attention for the Danny Masterson Jane Does and bringing justice. There's a big community who is really trying to generate press and generate attention to it by leaving comments, by liking, by subscribing. You guys have done this with Aaron's videos, with Tommy Scovel's videos, with Tony Ortega's videos. And the engagement got the mainstream media to actually cover the story. So I thank you guys for that, and I'll see you down the road. Take care.